know I wasn't concentrating and that tripod went over and my main stills camera face planted in the sand, scratched at least the lens coatings and probably a little bit more serious level scratches there. No idea how that's going to affect image quality. In two minds about how much to use this lens for the rest of the trip now. I haven't got a spare equivalent. I've got the 20 that I'm filming on and I've got a 14, both of them wide aperture lenses. What a beautiful sunrise. It was almost made all the better by being subtle. I would have liked the reflective sand flats to catch a little bit more of the light, but I think it will work. I'm a little bit unsure about whether my composition worked or not, because I was looking for sand tracks drawn by the dune grasses in the wind, and lots of them had either human or animal footprints through them. There was even one that looked like it had a red deer slot in it. I mean, it could be a red deer, or it could be a cow, or any other cloven-hoofed animal, I guess. But imagine a red deer in the foreground with those beautiful mountains in the background. Absolutely fantastic wildlife shot. Anyway, there were quite a few footprints in the mid-ground. I'm not so worried about those because I feel like I can clone those out quite happily. I don't have any ethical issues with that. I did step through the sand track that was the main feature of my image though, and I'm a little bit worried that might have an impact. We'll see. I couldn't see, I'd trodden quite lightly, so I couldn't see that there were any issues, but it's the sort of thing that gives me pause to be too pleased about this image before seeing it a little bit closer on the computer. The sand tracks here are not quite as spectacular as on Harris or Lewis. Over where the dune grass is, there's none of that two-tone sand. There is a bit of volcanic sand around certain areas, so perhaps you can get some nicer two-tone sand patterns, but it will be a little bit more subtle in this image. But I hope that it comes through okay. That's it for me shooting this morning. I need to go back to the car and sort out my camera bag. Since upgrading my video system and getting a drone, it hasn't been easy to use, and I need to go back and rationalise some of the compartments so that it's a little bit less stuffed. I also need to prep for a hike. There's a storm coming in and 60 km/h winds are quite likely from Thursday onwards. It's Tuesday today, and it's supposed to be sunny this afternoon. So I think this is my best window for exploring some of the lochs around Inverpolly Forest, which I've wanted to do for a little while. So I'm going to prepare for that as well and head off about midday. But that's for next week's video. For now, let's see whether the image from this morning worked. I was trying hard to stay focused here. While I knew I could make the rest of the trip work with the lenses I had remaining, I was pissed and fighting the temptation to pack up my car and go home right then and there. This was the second careless mishap in less than 12 hours. The night before, I'd left my audio recorder set up for ambient sound on the bank of the loch. Only once I'd settled in for dinner and was ready to go to sleep did I realise my mistake. Exhausted, I had to hike back to where I'd shot the lone tree the evening before. Still weighing up my options, I got back to the car and tidied my camera bag and had some breakfast. I'm not sure about the image I took this morning. Maybe it's because of the damaged lens, but I just don't think it's up to the standard of last year's image from this beach. I'd been careless when I approached this composition, and I had to clone out a few footprints in the midground. The tracks made by the marram grass were not a strong enough feature to act as a foreground hook, but luckily the green of the grass itself anchors the eye. But even though the foreground element works, there is something imbalanced about this image. Perhaps there is a little bit too much midground. When I first set up this composition, I had hoped that the reflective sand would pick up the colour of the sky and catch fire with sunrise. but it was fairly underwhelming in the end. Sometimes it's hard to approach composition in the dark and to get it right first time, even with the night vision of live previews. Perhaps I should have focused less on the grass and walked out onto the wet sand. Hindsight is a wonderful thing though. Perhaps though I find this a challenging image because I can't separate the cost of this shoot from the result. I've had this feeling once before. An image I took in Porlock Weir resulted in a mishap and several flooded lenses. However, while this Porlock image has turned into one of my favourites, I don't expect the one from Achnahaird will do the same. I learnt a lot of lessons from this photography trip. Number one was to take my time and not to force too much out of myself. I'd set myself the goal of at least 11 videos out of this holiday, but this was the morning when I started to adjust my expectations and become a little bit more realistic about what I could achieve. In the end, the scratch lens was repairable. An expensive mistake, but one that I'll learn from. I've always treated my gear in a rough manner. I think of photography equipment as tools, and I've needed to put them in harm's way sometimes to get photos. But with video, there's an extra dimension. I need to take a little bit more care. Otherwise, filming these trips will become unsustainable. I'd like to say that this was the low point of the trip, and that things got better from here, but there was still some drama to come. If you like this video, please subscribe to follow the rest of the trip. New episodes are released 10 AM on Saturdays. I'll see you there.